So you want to learn calligraphy, but you don't want to spend any money. Listen, I'm here for it. You know I love my brush pens, but not having any doesn't mean that you can't do it. And that's what I'm going to show you in this video. Okay, so typically when someone wants to learn calligraphy, I tell them they need three things. First, a brush pen or a pointed pen, but usually a brush pen, which is about $4. Second, some paper, and it has to be good quality paper if you're going to be using those brush pens on it. So for a whole pad of the stuff I recommend, it's about $10. And then lastly, a course to learn from, which can run you literally hundreds of dollars, even thousands. But the one I recommend is a 90-minute free crash course, which I'll link to later, and it'll all be below. So we're off to the right start on that one. So truly, all in all, even starting with the right materials that I recommend isn't as expensive as people think it is. At least it doesn't have to be. So for everything I mentioned, you can grab and get started for under $15. That being said, I totally understand wanting that number to be zero. So I'm going to tell you three different ways you can do that. First, I'm going to put an example up here at the top of what the goal is in calligraphy, and that is to be able to create thick and thin lines like these. With brush pens, we do that by adjusting the pressure because the pen is flexible, so you can get those thick and thin lines by pressing harder and lighter. So there's our example of what this would look like if you did buy a brush pen. Again, we're not buying brush pens though, so here's what you can do instead to get the same effect. First of all, you can use a pencil. Pencil lead is soft. Some are softer than others. I'll talk about that in a second. So you can use them for calligraphy and press harder and softer to see the differences the same way you would with a brush pen. The best kind of pencil to use is one that has the letter B beside it. So this one is 3B, but HB, 2B, 3B or higher, that means the softness of the lead. So the higher the number beside the B, the softer it'll be, and the more difference you'll see in your pressures. So here's what this looks like with a pencil. Note how you can see those thins and thick lines just by changing the pressure on your pencil. Okay, option number two is to steal your kids' Crayola or whatever similar brand markers. Crayola markers are usually pointed or chiseled, however you want to explain them, like this. So with a little experimentation of how you hold them, you can definitely get thick lines and thin lines with them. It just means moving your hand in kind of a different way than you do with brush pens, but it's doable. So here's what that same word looks like with a Crayola marker. And number three is to do what's called faux calligraphy. With faux calligraphy, you can literally use anything to write with and you still get the effect of calligraphy. How? By writing a word without thicknesses and then just going back and drawing them in. Super simple. You thicken the parts that should be thick and you leave the parts that should be thin, thin. So this is just a normal felt tip marker and I'm going to show you what that looks like in faux calligraphy. So I've got the whole thing written out in my strokes and now I'm just going to go back and downstroke, add thicknesses to the downstroke, anywhere that my pen was moving in a downwards direction. I feel like so many people do faux calligraphy unknowingly, or they do it purposely but kind of not properly because they've seen the effect of calligraphy and so they try to mimic it, but without understanding that the downstroke is just wherever your pen was moving in a downwards direction. People tend to put the thicknesses in the wrong place. There you go. I use faux calligraphy all the time on surfaces like chalkboards or wood or mirrors where you can't use brush pens. So there you have it. That's three free writing options. And then for paper, since you're not using fancy pens and you don't need to protect them the way you do your brush pens, you can literally use any paper you want. So grab printer paper or your kids' lined homework paper, whatever paper you have. It doesn't matter since you're not using fancy pens that you have to protect. So now you have a free writing tool that you already owned, free paper, and a free course. Seriously though, a little more about that free course. I do talk about using brush pens and all the fancier tools in there, but you can absolutely sign up and apply what you've learned in there using one of these free tools we just talked about. That course teaches you everything you need to know to learn calligraphy from the very ground up in 90 minutes, just as if we were at an in-person workshop together. I'm going to link to that below, and I hope this was helpful and I hope it encourages you to get started even without spending any money. Just give it a try already. I think you're going to love it and you might get hooked and want to spend that $15 down the road.